July 15th, 2016. Guys, I'm going to show you the video that I think is one of the most important as far as a political type video that you've ever seen, and it blows what the mainstream media has been trying to push down our throats. It blows it out of the water. And I said this from the beginning, and I'll say this again. Don't come on my channel and say your vote doesn't count. How much did Hillary pay you to put that comment there? Be honest. I've said from the beginning, a groundswell will change the minds of the elected officials, the Republican National Committee that we're looking at now, and it will be so important, this vote. And watch this video, guys. It'll prove exactly what I was saying. It's a proud time for me, being an American, to see what happened in this video. Any of you guys in high school that are studying government or in college political science, any of this is a lesson in many ways. If you'd watched several hours of this the last few days, you would have got a very good lesson. Some of it was quite boring, but you got a lesson in parliamentary procedure, rules, amendments to amendments, things like that. But I took out this 21 minutes because it is the best I've ever seen. Enjoy it. One other thing. In the video yesterday where I showed the lady, or I'll just say Miss LaRue, that said that her main job was to take down Donald Trump by unbinding the delegates. Her and this fella named Curly Hagelin. Now, they brought this vote up, and Mr. Hagelin got up and said, this is a good vote, we need to do it. Now, there was probably 10 or 12, I didn't count, people that stood up and said, no, let's bind the delegates to the voters. In other words, if your state voted for Donald Trump, then the delegates are bound to that. But this lady and Curly Hagelin thought they knew more than we did. We're too stupid to vote for the right person that we want. That was their whole thing. Now, I want you to notice something. At the end of this vote, notice how many people stood up and said, yes, let's let America's vote count. And then for you guys that are in the States, for the people that stood up and said, no, don't let the vote count, which was, I think, only about 12 or 13. I want you to remember who these people are. The next time they want to be part of your RNC committee, your vote doesn't count to these people. And again, I think they were all paid by the Democrats. There's no other reason for it. But listen to what some of these longtime members came in and said, and you'll see that they were overwhelmed by phone calls, emails, saying you better let our vote count, and they listened. It's amazing what a groundswell would do, and that's what I've said. Again, your vote counts. One other thing, Miss LaRue that said she had all the supporters behind her in Colorado, I guess, which I don't believe, she never stood up for this amendment. She never got up and said she was against it or for it. She just sat down. She was too embarrassed. She had made in the 7 minutes or so before this, she had made one other amendment that was trying to lead into this. It got shot down immediately. She didn't even stand up for this amendment that she was sent here, protected by God, to bring to the people. She was saying, I'm too smart. Your votes don't count. You're all too stupid. I can decide. That's where the Common Core Teacher Association gets you. She got shot down. Great day in America. It's a heads up. Be safe. Watch the video.
Point 1. This impacts Rule 37, and it has been proposed by Mr. Ross of Nevada, who is recognized for the purpose of making a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I introduce Amendment 37.1 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All right. Mr. Ross, would you like to address your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to use the B word. binding. I think it's fair. I think it's what millions of voters expect. Now, while I have enjoyed, up to this point, the many and varied theological discussions on how many parliamentary angels can dance on the head of a parliamentary pin, it's time to put an end to those discussions and to clarify once and for all. This amendment, and one for the following rule that inserts the identical language into that rule, is meant to do just that. It's to address arguments that have been going on for years about whether or not the rules of our party permit binding or not. This amendment and a companion amendment for Rule 38 will do just that. In this particular case, the arguments that the rights of certain delegates to demand a roll call somehow allow them to invalidate their binding would be put to rest. I'm a politician. The voters in my constituency, at the caucuses in our constituency, voted overwhelmingly for Mr. Donald Trump. I have no intention of returning to those people who I rely on to keep me in office by telling them I had some part in shredding their votes. It's time, after all these years, to put an end to this. Let's give the people what they expect, that their votes count. I don't mean to be bitter about this. I don't mean to be confrontational. But for heaven's sake, the argument needs to be settled one way or the other. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. I have been asked to remind you by counsel that the 9:30 deadline is rapidly approaching. And if you are in line at the help desk at the stroke of 9:30, they will help you finish your amendment. If you walk up at 9:30 and 10 seconds, you will not have the opportunity to have your amendment drafted. Is everyone clear on that procedure? Excellent. All right. We have had a motion made and seconded. Is there anyone who rises in opposition to the amendment? Is there anyone who rises in opposition to the amendment? Seeing none, is there anyone else who rises in support of the amendment? Mr. Ashe.
Madam Chairman, members of our committee, in 56 contests across the country, into the Caribbean, and out into the Pacific, Donald Trump won almost 14 million votes. He nearly doubled the vote total of his nearest competitor. He surpassed the number of delegates required by over 300 delegates. And yet, amongst some, there seemed to be some sort of question whether or not he is the presumptive nominee. There's been a lot of battling back and forth. There's been a lot of emails that we get and constant harassment from various people across the country. In Arizona, we had a presidential preference election where Donald Trump received over 50% of the votes cast in that election contest. By state law, all 58 delegates in Arizona are required to vote for Donald Trump on the first ballot. Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee. There should be absolutely no question as to who we are going to cast our votes for. As Republicans, we oftentimes give our elected officials a hard time about campaigning one way and governing another. As delegates, we were elected by our state conventions and whatever manner in which we arrived here. We only had to perform one function, and that was to vote for the candidate that we were bound to. I urge all of us to vote for this amendment and for the following, and to get this matter finally understood across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashe. Is there anyone who'd like to rise in opposition? Is there anyone who'd like to rise in opposition? Mr. Hogland.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I rise in opposition to this primarily because it seeks to link a pre-convention rule to a convention rule. Hmm? And soon I just submitted an amendment to this very same topic that provides satisfaction within Rule 37, within the convention rules completely, and without mixing pre-convention rules with convention rules. So therefore, I would urge the defeat of this one in anticipation of the complete proper way to do this, which I'm sure all of you guys will embrace.
I'm sure they will embrace and then debate what is the proper way to do this. Thank you, Mr. Hogland. Are there others who wish to rise in support of this amendment? Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This matter has obviously been the subject of more pre-convention publicity than any rules matter ever in living memory. It is obviously an important issue. People have changed sides on the issue. There were people like me who wished to repeal the requirements in the rules that were passed by the Romney campaign, which prevented legitimate delegates' votes being counted if they cast their vote for somebody who hadn't met the greatly increased threshold. That position I attempted in April of 2013 to pass an omnibus repeal of all the amendments that the Romney people passed that we could repeal. But circumstances changed. I moved at our meeting in April a rifle shot amendment to the rules, focused just on that disenfranchisement of delegates, which caused hundreds of delegates to not have their votes counted at the Tampa Convention. As the primaries progressed, it became clear that the operation of the rules was going to have two candidates who would qualify, Trump and Cruz. And suddenly, from the establishment forces came the idea there are no rules to be changed. The convention writes its own rules. And that lasted until it was perceived that Cruz and Trump people might have a majority of this convention, and the establishment's positions changed. And Chairman Priebus said, we should not amend the rules. We should not amend the rules. In my judgment, these rules for the nominating process at the convention can be amended in only one of two ways. One, if
the gentleman's time is expired.
Or second, after a battle which could split this party. And I think we need to avoid that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. The staff has just handed me the following sticky. 2 minutes to the 9:30 deadline. We are going to strictly enforce this. 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Is there someone who wishes to rise in opposition? Anyone wish to rise in opposition? Seeing none, are there those who would wish to speak in support? Mr. Scheffler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Steve Scheffler from Iowa. I, too, like Mr. Blackwell, was initially opposed to binding, but based on the fact that 22 of the 28 delegates to the National Convention in 2012 from Iowa voted for a candidate who came in third place, even though they did everything legally by the book. It was an embarrassment, and I don't want to see that happen again. In my state, it's a purple state, there was a new poll that came out, I think, just a couple days ago, that Donald Trump is leading by 2 points. And I understand that we had these candidates all vetted, But I want to remind everybody what Phyllis Schlafly, who's as conservative as anybody or more so than anybody in this room, that she said if you're looking for a perfect candidate, you won't find Jesus Christ's name on the ballot on November 8th. And the people that have been sending these emails, it's over, folks. We need to get behind our candidate. And I guess it all came, all the birds came to roost when I was informed by the Wall Street Journal about 3 weeks ago they were going to run a negative ad against me on one of these unbinding of the delegates. And no offense to anybody that lives on the East Coast or the West Coast, that your dialect is different than mine. But for Pete's sakes, why would you have somebody come into my state who understand how people talk in a Midwestern accent and bring somebody from New Jersey with a distinctive, harsh New Jersey accent to beat up on me? And it isn't like I wasn't transparent from day one. I told people when this binding took effect where I was at. People in my state support me overwhelmingly. And I just have to tell you, it's an insult. It's over. Let's get behind our nominee right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scheffler. Are there others who wish to speak in opposition? Opposition. Seeing none, are there those who wish to speak in support? The lady in the right
Yes,
here.
Eileen Grossman.
Yes, Eileen.
Rhode Island.
Yes.
As many of these people, fine people, have received, I personally have received 440 emails to vote my conscience, to unbind, etc. I want you to know that I answered every single one of them, and the responses back weren't nice. I was very respectful. Let me just say this. I will not turn my back on 14.1 million people that voted for Donald Trump. I will not. I was elected to be a Trump delegate by our state law. I cannot do anything to unbind. And my constituency, at least 300 texted me and emailed me, from my state, that voted for Donald Trump and said, you better not vote against Donald Trump. So I strongly urge us to begin hugging the person next to us. Do a kumbaya, be unified, be happy. We have a better nominee than the Democrats.
Thank you. Are there any people who wish to speak in support, or excuse me, in opposition? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? All right. Did the gentleman rise to support this?
Yes.
Yes. All right. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. My name is Matt Hall. I'm from Michigan. It's an honor to be here. And I wanted to speak in favor of this motion. Donald Trump won Michigan overwhelmingly and we had rules as a convention body that and a party that those voters came to the polls in reliance on those rules that included binding. And so our voters, our state party, when we made rules, our state, when we had a taxpayer-funded primary, and all of the candidates in their strategies relied upon these rules, which included binding. And so, when I was elected as a delegate, what was clear to me is that we have a responsibility to honor that commitment that we made to our voters and the rules, that we will honor their vote and their vote will count. And therefore, I fully intend to support Mr. Trump and support the binding under the current rules. And I call the previous question.
Thank you, sir. Previous question is in order. We will immediately move to a vote on closing debate. All those in favor of closing debate on amendment number 37.1, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes clearly have it. We will now vote on that one. I'm going to call for a standing vote on this. Won't that suffice, Mr. Blackwell?
That is division.
I called for a division, which is a standing vote, Madam Chairman.
Well, on previous question? All right. We will hold a standing vote. We are moving to a vote on the main motion. All those in favor of adopting Amendment 37.1, please stand. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. The tally of the vote is as follows. The ayes are 87, the nays are 12. The motion passes.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes. Name and state, please.
Doug O.C., California. I'd like to move to lay on the table a motion to reconsider.
The parliamentarians are telling me the form of the motion is incorrect. What is it you'd like to achieve?
I want to end discussion on this thing we just voted on. I do not want to have a motion to reconsider 10 minutes or 10 hours from now.
So you'd like to make a motion to reconsider at this time?
I'd like to lay it on the table. I don't care to have a vote.
I'm afraid we can't do that. If you want to end it, you'd have to make a motion to reconsider and we would vote again.
Would that end any further discussion of this?
Yes, it would.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Mr.
So I understand
Craig.
that if the gentleman were to make a motion to reconsider, and then you had voted with the majority, and you decided to vote no on reconsideration, that would end things once and for all.
Correct.
Okay, I'm a slow learner, but I'm on.
Request for information.
Yes, sir.
Am I not correct, Madam Chair, that in a motion to reconsider, only those persons who voted against it can vote to vote for it? Or do I have that backwards?
No, the motion must be made by those who voted on the prevailing side.
Right.
So if Mr. Ossie voted in favor, he is eligible to make a motion to reconsider.
All right. And so only the people who voted for, so those people who voted against the motion cannot vote for this motion to reconsider. Do I have that right?
Cannot move to reconsider.
Oh, cannot move. Oh, thank you.
All right. Mr. Ossie, did you wish to make a motion to reconsider?
I move to reconsider.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. We will move directly to a motion to reconsider.
So as a point of information, when we say that this discussion is over, what does that mean?
Okay. Name and state, please.
This is Fred Brown from Alaska.
It means that we cannot reconsider this particular amendment.
All right, thank you.
All right. All of those in favor of reconsidering this amendment, please. Mr. Ossie, you have another point to make?
Madam Chairman, just for everybody's edification, an aye vote on this means
That
that
we,
we take it up again.
Correct.
No vote means we don't take it up again.
that is correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right. So all those in favor of the motion to reconsider, meaning an aye vote means that you want to reconsider and reopen debate. All of those people, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Not at all close. The noes have it. All right. All right. Just for everyone's information, we have passed our 9:30 deadline. My understanding is that very few amendments came in at that point. Is this